Hi, welcome to the Financial Aid Information session. My name is George Leniff. I have been here at FIU for a little bit over 11 years, and joining me today.
Hi, my name is Veronica Diaz, and I am going on 3 years here at FIU.
We're going to be taking this opportunity to talk to you guys a little bit about the financial aid process. We understand that it can be a very intimidating process at the beginning, so hopefully this will help to dispel some of those fears. We're going to start with the most basic question. What exactly is financial aid? Well, financial aid is actually a source of monetary support. It can actually come in very different forms. First, it could be either a scholarship, which are based on merit or talent. So, for example, if you're a high-achieving student, you may actually be receiving a scholarship based on your GPA or the things that you actually did in high school. Or perhaps you're actually a very strong athlete or a talented musician. You may actually receive scholarships based on those talents. In addition to the scholarships, we also offer grants. Now, grants are need-based funding, meaning that you actually have to demonstrate financial need based on the results of your FAFSA application. This is actually free money, so you don't have to pay it back, but it is specifically targeted to the neediest students. Now, a lot of people get confused when it comes to financial aid because they think that financial aid is only the free money. However, financial aid also include student loans. This is loans that you actually have to borrow and repay back, and because it's a loan, you have to repay it back with interest, but it is still part of financial aid. And we also offer student employment, so you can actually work and earn some money to help you supplement your educational expenses. Now, the categories of financial aid is divided into two different categories. The first one is the gift aid, which would include the scholarships and the grants. Now, this is the free portion of the financial aid, and essentially you just get it. It helps you cover your educational expenses, and it's pretty much an entitlement. For self-help aid, on the other hand, there's actually something that is involved in those particular awards. So this is where the student employment comes in, which you actually have to work to earn that money, or the student loans, which you actually have to repay back. Now, some examples of gift aid, since they can actually be coming from many different sources. We'll start with the federal government. So, for example, you may be receiving a Pell Grant or the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grants. It's a very long name, so we call it FSEOG. But essentially, these are grants that are coming from the federal government to assist the neediest students. Now, help can also come from the state. So here, for example, in Florida, we offer the Florida Student Assistance Grant and the First Generation Grant. Now, in addition to federal and state aid, we also offer institutional grants, which is money that's funded by the university, and it targets the students that have the most need. In addition to the grants, since it's part of gift aid, scholarships are also falling under this category. The Florida Bright Future Scholarship, for example, is a state program, so it's free money and it's a scholarship. But universities also offer different institutional scholarships. So here at FIU, we do have our university-sponsored scholarship programs. Now, scholarships are not only limited to what the state or the university is offering you. You may also apply for private scholarships. Some of the scholarships are actually renewable for a certain period of time, depending on the terms and conditions of the sponsor. But there's also private scholarships that are a one-time deal, usually for a specific amount. My advice to you would be to apply to as many scholarships as you can. It doesn't matter if it's a one-time deal or not, because technically it's money you didn't have before, and every little bit helps to help you cover your education.
As my colleague stated earlier, another way of receiving aid is receiving self-help aid. Self-help aid requires a student to actually take some sort of action. For example, we have the student employment, also known as the Federal Work-Study Program. If a student is eligible for federal work-study money, he or she can work on campus, like a part-time position where the money earned can be used for educationally related expenses, or it can also be off campus. For example, we have a program called America Reads, where students can work at a first or first or second grade students, and they're earning money for it. Not only does this help them receive financial assistance, but it's also very rewarding to the student. It's a very rewarding experience. Aside from federal work-study, the government offers federal student loans. First, we have the Federal Perkins Loan. This loan has a 5% fixed interest rate, and the students do not have to begin paying this back till 9 months after they either graduate or drop below half-time status. We also have the William D. Ford Federal Direct Loans. The first one is the subsidized loan. This is a need-based loan that is guaranteed to students. It will be offered once you fill out the FAFSA. The good thing about this loan is that it does not have any interest while the student is attending school. It actually does have interest, but the federal government pays for it. So the student is not responsible for the interest that is accruing while they are in school. The other loan is the federal unsubsidized loan. This loan does begin to accrue interest while the student is in school. The interest rate is 4.66%, and it is a fixed rate. So if that's the rate when you receive the loan, it is not going to change. For both the subsidized and the unsubsidized, repayment does not begin until 6 months after the student graduates or they drop below half-time status. To drop below half-time status, a student would be taking less than 6 credits. So it's very important to remember that if you need the student loans, you must be enrolled for 6 or more credits. If a student needs additional funds for school, the government offers the PLUS loan, which is the parent loan for undergraduate students. This is a loan that is based on the parent's credit. They have to actually apply for this loan. When they apply, if they're approved, the parent will then borrow money on the student's behalf, but the parent will be responsible for repayment. This loan is currently at a 7.21 fixed interest rate, and repayment begins 60 days after it disperses, although the parent can choose to defer the payments. Now, how much can a student borrow in student loans, and how are loans repaid? Well, as you can see the chart, a first-year student is eligible to receive $3,500 in the subsidized loan. This amount is split evenly between the fall and the spring semester. So a student would essentially be receiving $1,750 for fall and $1,750 for spring. A student will also receive $2,000 under the unsubsidized loan if they wish to accept it. If you noticed on the chart, as a student progresses into their sophomore year and then junior and senior year, the loan amounts increase. So the further along you are, the more money that they offer you. If you look at the bottom of the chart, you're going to notice that there is a maximum that a student can borrow. So for example, for a dependent student, the maximum amount that he or she can borrow is $23,000 in total under the subsidized loan and $8,000 under the unsubsidized loan. Once a student has borrowed to the maximum limit, they cannot borrow any more federal loans. Independent students, if a student is considered to be independent by the FAFSA, the amounts are a little bit different. If you notice, the subsidized loan is still $23,000, but the unsubsidized loan is a bit greater than it is for dependent students. So, how are they repaid? Well, 6 months after graduation or after dropping below half-time status, the loans go into repayment. The student will be given different payment options to fit their budget. It is very, very important to remember to try to borrow only what you need for your tuition and related expenses. This is money that you will have to repay back. So if you don't borrow responsibly, you're going to have a large debt in the future that you are going to have to pay.
Now, it all starts with the FAFSA application. Now, in order to apply for FAFSA, it's important to note that a student has to be admitted as a degree-seeking student. So you actually have to be working towards your bachelor's degree. In addition, to apply for federal funding, a student must be a citizen or eligible non-citizen of the United States. Keep in mind, though, that some visa status categories may aid you with state funding, but not federal. Now, also keep in mind that if you are a male student, you are required to be registered with a selective service. This only applies to male students. And you can actually use the FAFSA application to register if you didn't do that while you were in high school. It all starts with a FAFSA application, and FAFSA actually stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So you apply at fafsa.gov. It's important to know that the first F in FAFSA stands for free. So if you're ever in a place that is actually asking you for money to help you apply for financial aid or to help you look for scholarships or anything like that, you're definitely in the wrong place. So close the browser and go to the government site. It's always free to apply for federal financial aid, and you should never have to pay anyone any money to help you with that. It is also important that you actually and your parents obtain your PIN number with FAFSA. This PIN number is what you will use to do the electronic signature on your application, as well as the electronic signature if you decide to borrow a loan. You will have to complete the promissory note, and you'll use the same PIN number to sign it electronically. Make sure that you pick 4 numbers that you can actually easily remember, because you have to apply for financial aid every academic year, so it needs to be something that you can remember every year to do the electronic signatures for. Now, in order to complete the FAFSA application, you will need your and your parents' most recent tax information. You'll need a valid Social Security number and that PIN number for the electronic signatures. Now, keep in mind that some schools have very early application deadlines. Therefore, you need to become familiar with that. For example, here at FIU, we have our priority deadline for March 1st of every year. So essentially, we want our students to complete their FAFSA application on or before March 1st. However, the tax filing deadline is not until April 15th. So what we recommend our students is for them to complete their FAFSA using an estimate of the income if they haven't filed taxes yet. And then once the taxes are done, then go back, make a correction, and make sure that you go ahead and update the information. Another important tool that you have available is the data retrieval tool. So if the taxes are already done, you can actually link your FAFSA application to the IRS, retrieve the information, and it automatically pre-fills all those questions for you. It makes it a lot easier for the student, and in addition, it minimizes the number of errors that you can potentially make on the application.
Now, let's talk a little bit about state funding. Here in the state of Florida, the state offers the Bright Future Scholarship. This is a scholarship that a student earns while they're still in high school. And there's 3 categories or 3 different awards that they do give. The first one is the Florida Academic Scholarship. Then we have the Florida Medallion Scholarship. And then we have the Florida Gold Seal Vocational Scholarship. Keep in mind that the Gold Seal Vocational Scholarship can only be applied to institutions who offer vocational or technical programs. Here at FIU, we don't offer those programs, so we accept the Academic Scholarship and the Medallion Scholarship. When do I apply for the Bright Future Scholarship? Very good question. A student can apply for this scholarship after December 1st of their senior year in high school, and the deadline is right before they graduate. If a student graduates from high school and they forgot to apply, they can no longer apply for this scholarship. They lose the chance to be eligible for free money. In order to submit the application, you need to complete the initial student Florida Financial Aid application online at www.floridastudentfinancialaid.org. What are the requirements for the Bright Future scholarships? A student must earn a Florida Standard High School diploma or its equivalent. They must not be found guilty of a felony charge, and they must meet the academic and community service requirements for the award. It is important to keep in mind that if a student is eligible for the Bright Future Scholarship, it only covers the fall and the spring semester. The Bright Future Scholarship will not cover courses taken in the summer semester. So what are the requirements for the different categories? For the academic scholarship, a student must earn a 3.5 weighted GPA, a score of 1290 on the SAT or 29 on the ACT, at least 100 hours of community service, and they must earn the following credits: 4 credits of English, 4 credits of math, but it must be Algebra 1 or higher, 3 natural science credits, 3 social science credits, and 2 foreign language credits in the same language. Keep in mind that the state of Florida often changes the requirements on a yearly basis. The Medallion Scholarship has different requirements. The Medallion Scholarship, a student is required to earn a 3.0 GPA, a score of 1170 on the SAT or 26 on the ACT, at least 75 hours of community service, and they must earn the following credits: 4 of English, 4 of math of Algebra 1 or higher, 3 natural sciences with 2 labs, 3 social science credits, and 2 foreign language credits in the same language. If you notice, the requirements for the Medallion are lower than the ones for the academic. The difference is the amount of the award. Currently, for the Medallion Scholarship, the state of Florida pays $77 a credit. And for the academic scholarship, they cover $103 a credit. So as you can see, this is very, very helpful to help finance your college education.
As we mentioned earlier, the scholarships can also be funded through the institution that you're planning to attend. If you are an admitted student here at FIU who has already paid their matriculation fee, or a currently enrolled FIU student, you can search our FIU Foundation scholarships through fiu.academicworks.com. Here you'll have access to the many different foundation-sponsored scholarships that are offered through FIU. If you have any questions in regards to Academic Works, you may actually contact Laura Castillo. Their email is actually awhelp@fiu.edu, and you have her number here. But essentially, all the FIU scholarships that are sponsored through our foundation are given through this site. So make sure that once you become an FIU student and you've paid your matriculation fee, that you log in to see what's available to you. Some important information to keep in mind while trying to apply for financial aid and trying to find the necessary funds to cover your educational costs. It's very important that you have a very good relationship with your high school counselor or your CAP or BRACE counselor. They're often in contact with the local university, so they're a very good first point of contact since they have a lot of access to that information. In addition, if you know what university you're planning to attend, it's a good idea to start researching to see what they offer as far as their scholarship programs. Another important tidbit is to make sure that you develop a relationship with the financial aid office. Essentially, we receive a lot of information from private sponsors, so we actually post that information on our office. So if you're looking for private scholarships, it's always a good idea to pass by and see what's available. Another important site that you might find useful is fastweb.com. Here you can actually do a scholarship search online, and based on the information that you provide on your profile, it's going to tell you what private scholarships you might be eligible for, and it'll give you the contact information of that sponsor. The good thing about FastWeb is that it actually sends you an updated email if new information becomes available. When you're applying to financial aid, it actually can be a very intimidating process, especially your first time around. The best tip that I can give you is to make sure that you plan ahead. You want to make sure that all your financial aid paperwork and everything is done way in advance, because you want your awards to be posted before you even register for classes. You have to apply as early as possible, and you have to be very aware of the deadlines. Once again, the FAFSA application becomes available on January 1st, and for us here at FIU, we require students to complete their FAFSA no later than March 1st. Keep in mind also that the financial aid application is free, so if you accidentally go to a different site that's not the government site, and they're actually asking you for money, make sure you close the browser window and go to the appropriate site. It is also a good idea to become familiar with the policies of the financial aid office of the university that you're planning to attend. Even though the regulations are the same, the way that different schools provide their financial aid might be slightly different, so you need to be aware of how the financial aid works at the institution that you're planning to attend. Be aware of the deadlines and what is expected of you as a student. Another important tidbit is become familiar with their website. All the financial aid information that a student must know is available on the financial aid website, so it's a good source of information, as well as probably answering most of the intimidating questions that you have. And of course, you can always pass by the financial aid office, and the staff will be more than glad to answer any of the questions that you have. Now, we do have some time available for some questions, so let's get started. Let's see. Mark Sanchez from North Miami wants to know if there is a limit to the Pell Grant.
There actually is a limit to the Pell Grant, Mark. The government will fund the Pell Grant for 6 years or 12 semesters. It's called the 600% rule. So a student has to keep track of the amount of Pell Grant that they're earning and that they're finishing their degree in a timely manner.
So essentially, completing a bachelor's degree should take you about 4 years, and the government allows you to receive the Pell Grant for up to 6 full-time years. So you still have some leeway in case that you have to take extra classes or switch majors or anything like that. But in addition to the overall limit, there's also a limited amount that you can receive per year, and it's determined by your FAFSA application. Essentially, your EFC, which is your estimated family contribution, determines your family's ability to afford a college education. The lower the number, the needier is the student, and then the more grants that the student will be eligible for. So essentially, someone with Pell Grant eligible EFC could be anywhere from 0, if they don't qualify, all the way to $5,730 per year. Now, for those of you that are just tuning in, my name is George. I'm one of the financial aid coordinators at the financial aid office.
And I'm Veronica.
Joined by
Veronica Diaz, another coordinator in the financial aid office.
Now, Dolores Glassman from Plantation, Florida wants to know, when is the latest date that you can submit a FAFSA? Good question.
Very good question, Dolores. The last day you can submit your FAFSA is June 30th. However, we do recommend that you fill out your FAFSA as soon as possible. Here at FIU, we give the March 1st priority deadline. We want students to have their FAFSA completed and have all their documents in way in advance, way before school begins. That way, the first day of school, you don't have to worry about how your education is going to be funded.
Right. And pretty much you can still apply after March 1st, but you're seriously limiting the potential financial aid that you can receive. Remember that financial aid comes from many different sources, the federal, the state, and the institution. While the Pell Grant is guaranteed, so no matter when you apply, if you're eligible for it, you get it. Everything else that's coming from the state of the institution, we have a certain amount of money available. So once we spend that money giving it out to students, we can't generate any new awards. So essentially, the students that apply the earliest have the best potential to receive the most financial aid. Now, we have Dave Jarvis from Pompano Beach, Florida, that wants to know what to do if you don't talk to your parents and they do not want to help you with your financial aid. That's actually an interesting question.
Well, Dave, when you fill out your FAFSA, there's going to be a series of questions that's going to determine your dependency status. Usually, if you're under 24, not married, you don't have any children, you're considered a dependent student, and your parent information is required. If you're considered dependent and you can't provide that information, we do have a form on our website where you can ask us to evaluate your situation. This is called the professional judgment request, and all schools offer this. Keep in mind that there's a lot of documentation that is required. There's very few circumstances where we have the authority to change a student's dependency status. There has to be an extenuating circumstance as of to why the student does not have contact with the parent. We require documentation such as court documents, police reports, or letters from members of a community that can sort of corroborate or vouch for whatever the situation may be.
Essentially, pretty much the student would have to demonstrate either parental abuse or abandonment. It is a very difficult case, and we do evaluate them on a case-by-case basis, but the Department of Education has set forth the rules of what is a dependent student and what is an independent student, and it allows us the flexibility to make individual decisions on a case-by-case basis. So it really depends on the circumstances. But generally, a parent refusing to fill out the FAFSA application is usually not grounds for a dependency override. Now, we also have Randy Urbin from Hialeah. He wants to know what is the minimum amount of credits that you need to take in order to receive financial aid. Most financial aid programs actually require you to be enrolled at least as a half-time student, which comes down to 6 credits, usually 2 classes. Most classes are actually 3 credits worth. But essentially, to be considered a full-time student, you actually would have to be enrolled for 12 credits or more. Now, keep in mind that to complete one successful academic year and to move on from freshman to sophomore, for example, you have to earn 30 credits. So most students, what they do is they take 15 credits for fall and 15 credits for spring, and that would lead you to graduate on a timely manner within 4 years. Andres Gomez from Kendall, Florida wants to know if you finish filling out your FAFSA and your father loses his job. That's actually a very good question. Now the economy is actually bouncing back and things are improving, but there's still the possibility that some people are getting laid off, and it's actually using your last year's tax information, which may not reflect your current financial situation. In those cases, a student can actually fill out the professional judgment request form, as Veronica had mentioned, because it is an unusual circumstance, and we will evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. What the Department of Education allows us to do is essentially move the financial information from, for example, 2014 to the current estimate for 2015. Here at FIU, we actually require students to fill out the professional judgment request form for loss of employment 6 months after the loss of employment happened. That will give us a better idea of the finances of the household. Rick from San Antonio, Texas wants to know if you've ever seen Dwayne Wade or LeBron James or anyone else that's famous here in Miami. Well, I personally am not a sports fan, so I'm usually not hanging in those locations, so I have not seen any of the famous athletes that love to spend time in Miami. How about you, Veronica?
I have not, only at the basketball games, that's it.
I did see one time in Miami Beach, Carlos Vives, who's a singer from Latin America, but that was a long time ago.
Did you get his autograph?
I may have stalked him for a couple of blocks, and once he finally settled down at a restaurant, I did ask him for his autograph, so that was pretty exciting. Now, Luisa Mendez from Cutler Bay, Florida, wants to know if there are any good restaurants to eat on campus. Well, that's a very important question. Actually.
Absolutely. There's a big variety, a large variety of restaurants to choose from. My personal favorite, we have a Moe's on campus, we have a Chili's, an actual Chili's restaurant, we have a Salad Creations, for those of you that like to eat healthy, we have pizza, Pollo Tropical, we have Burger King, Taco Bell, Panda Express, we even have a nail salon, which I have an appointment to in the next hour, so we have all kinds of places on campus, we have a dry cleaner, yeah.
The list keeps growing.
And a post office.
As the university grows, they just keep adding new places. So whatever you like to eat, you will probably find somewhere on campus to eat it. Yeah, breakfast, lunch, dinner. The options are endless. But the best tip that I can give you as far as eating on campus is you need to go to the Breezeway, which is located on the first floor of the housing complex, and you have to try their
Cookies? Yes.
They are the best cookies that you could ever eat. So when you come visit on campus for like open house or a tour or anything like that, make sure to stop at Breezeway and have a cookie.
And if you don't live in Florida, have someone mail one to you.
We have Amory Fonseca from Los Angeles, California, so it's a little early for you over there. Wants to know if financial aid can cover study abroad. Actually, that's pretty important here at FIU. We do like to encourage our students to go and study abroad. It is a wonderful experience for growth, not only on a personal but intellectual. It's a great experience. We have an entire office that is dedicated just to study abroad, and yes, financial aid can help you with your study abroad expenses. Essentially, you still get your financial aid based on the number of credits that you're taking, and you can use that money to help you buy the plane ticket, your stay, and everything like that. So a good starting point would be to visit the study abroad office, and once you've decided on a plan, then come visit us in financial aid, and we can tell you more or less what you need to do to be able to participate.
Mark Buddy wants to know if you have Bright Futures and a full Pell Grant, is it possible to receive money back while studying? That is a wonderful question, Mark. When you do your FAFSA and you're a student, you're going to get an award letter. Your award letter may include Pell Grants, institutional grants, Bright Futures if you qualified, as well as your student loans. But the first thing that's going to happen is this money is going to go toward your tuition and or housing expenses. If you have any money left over, the money will be refunded to you for you to use for educational related expenses.
Right, and the key word there is educational related expenses.
Yes.
I've had students that have wanted to use their financial aid for other things, like perhaps getting a PlayStation 4 or something like that. Well, we're not going to police that. You're signing off that the aid that you're receiving is actually for your education. So you can put money in your car so you can come on campus, so you can pay for your classes, so you can eat while you're on campus, so you can buy books. Those are educational expenses. But essentially anything that exceeds your tuition and fees is going to be refunded to the student. And the good thing about FIU is that we always offer you the most financial aid that you're eligible for, and we leave it up to you to make a decision of which awards you want to accept or decline.
And just to add, remember that if you're borrowing student loans, this is a debt that you're going to have to repay later on when you're done with your career and maybe even have a family. So I would also give you the same advice to borrow only what you need and not to use toward expenses that are not related to your education, because in the few years that follow your beginning of school, you're going to have to pay it back. Correct. And with interest, it's going to have a higher amount when you're done.
And probably one of the most difficult things that you're going to have to learn as a freshman, aside from the academic side, is going to be how to make a budget. Perhaps up to this point, you really haven't had to worry about finances much, but once you're a freshman, you need to start thinking of those things, and you have to come up with a monthly budget, and the most difficult thing that you're going to have to do is actually sticking to that budget. But it's part of growing up, and it's part of a learning experience. Now we have Anna Lewis from Kendall, Florida, and she wants to know if undocumented students receive federal aid. Is it worth it to fill out a FAFSA if you're undocumented? And are there scholarships for undocumented students? Anna, unfortunately, federal financial aid is limited to citizens or legal residents of the United States. So if you don't have legal standing in the United States, you cannot fill out a FAFSA application, and you will not be receiving any federal aid. Depending on what the status is, you may be eligible for state scholarships like Bright Futures, for example, but it's very limited as far as what you can get. But essentially, as far as I know, there's really not much available for international students.
Suzanne Reynolds from New Orleans wants to know if either of you have attended FIU, and why did you choose FIU? Well, I love FIU, and I chose FIU because FIU is known for being a diverse institution. It was close to home. I'm very proud to be an FIU Panther. I actually work here. I got my bachelor's here very long time ago, and I just finished my master's degree here. So I love FIU, and I plan on staying in FIU. How about you, George?
I'm also an FIU graduate. Essentially, I don't know if you can tell by my accent, but I am not from here. So essentially, when I used to come visit my grandparents when I was younger, they would always drive me by FIU, and it was this like amazing institution that I would see, and they would always tell me, like, when you grow up, you have to go to FIU. So it's kind of like been on the agenda for a very long time, and you know, I'm not going to say when, but when I did attend FIU, I enjoyed it thoroughly to the point that I'm actually still here. But the university has grown tremendously since back then, and things have changed, and it just keeps getting better and better. So it is a great option if you're thinking of coming to FIU, and it's in Miami. Come on.
Exactly. Elisa Moreno from New York wants to know, what do you do if the FAFSA is due, but your parents haven't filled out their taxes? This is really actually an excellent question. We did say that we recommend for you to do your FAFSA before March 1st. A lot of students fail to fill it out because they feel like they have to have their parents' taxes, and the answer is you don't need to have them yet. There is an option on the FAFSA where the parents could choose that they will file, that they have not filed, but they will. And they can actually use an estimate of what they made for the past year, or they can look at their last pay stub or use their W-2 to fill out the FAFSA. We may require you, before you begin school, to provide information for us to verify or make the appropriate corrections. But the important thing to keep in mind is that we need you to do that initial application before March 1st. So no, they do not have to have their taxes filed yet to complete your FAFSA.
And remember that the FAFSA application is going to have the first time that you applied. So even if you go back later on and make corrections or update the information, it's always going to show that initial date of when you actually completed the application. So go ahead, fill it out with an estimate. Just make sure that you remember to go back and update the information when the taxes are actually done. Now, for our next question, we have Francisca from Sweetwater. Oh, that's across the street from us. Wants to know if you enjoyed your job and what parts did you enjoy the most. Okay, I'll let Veronica start on that one.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I love FIU, and I love that I work at FIU. My favorite part is actually working with students and see that as they progress in their goals of attaining their degree. So I love working with the students. I love working with my colleagues. It's a wonderful place to be. I'm actually excited to come to work every day. And again, I'm a student as well. So yeah. How about you, Jordan?
I actually enjoy the fact that we make a difference in people's lives and in the community because we're educating people. Maybe we're not teaching, but we're actually facilitating students actually being able to afford a college education. So that's what I like the most about my job. When I first started working in financial aid, it wasn't at FIU. I started at a different school with Veronica as well back in the day. I never dreamt that I was going to be a financial aid administrator when I grew up. Like, no little kid ever says, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a financial aid advisor. It kind of like happened and things fell into place. And honestly, I don't see myself doing anything else. So I'm very happy. Let's see.
Brett?
No pen. Sorry for mispronouncing your name.
Yes.
From Denver, Colorado, wants to know what the weather is like in Miami. Well, right now, what do we have? Look at the app. I think we're like 70 degrees or something.
Well, the rest of America is freezing. We are 73 degrees. Today's one of our coldest days.
Today is cold. Today is definitely
very cold. It's going to be it's going to go down to the 70s in the evening, to 70. That is very cold for us.
So, in other words, while our friends from New York or Denver might be a little bit snowed in, we're having wonderful weather here in Miami. Not to rub it on.
It could be a little. We have sporadic rain showers every now and then, but
yeah, summers are humid, but you know that's a price you pay for having wonderful weather all year long.
Yeah, most of us do not own any boots.
No, we don't.
Or leather jackets.
Now we have Liz from Brooklyn, New York, talking about being old, right? Wants to know what satisfactory academic progress is and how does that work? Well, it looks that Liz has been taking a little look at our financial aid website, which is a great thing for you to do. But essentially, I'm going to briefly tell you what it is, and then I'll give the floor to Veronica since it's her program. But the Department of Education is making an investment in your future when they're helping you cover your education. So they want to make sure that you stay on track. And they have put certain rules in place to make sure that students are working towards earning that degree. The whole point of coming to college, as fun as it may be, is actually to earn your bachelor's degree in a timely manner, hopefully. So pretty much they're making sure that students are staying on track. So do you want to elaborate a little bit about SAP?
I want to elaborate, George. So basically the government has a certain set of criteria that all recipients of financial aid have to follow in order to renew their financial aid. The first one is the academic standing. A student is expected to maintain at least a 2.0 GPA to be considered in good standing. When a student, if a student goes below a 2.0 GPA, after the third time, a student is dismissed from the university. Once a student is dismissed from the university, they lose their financial aid eligibility. The other criteria states that a student must successfully complete 67% of all the credits attempted. Here at FIU, we check that criteria at the end of the spring semester. So at the end of the spring semester, we'll review a student's grades and transcripts, and if they're not above, at 67% or above, they will not have eligibility for the next semester. We do have an appeals process in place if a student loses their financial aid, and different institutions have different policies concerning appeals.
Yeah, we understand that sometimes things happen beyond your control. So while the goal is to graduate and hopefully get the best grades that you can, we understand that sometimes some roadblocks may happen, but you know, it's something that it's part of the terms and conditions of financial aid, and we can work with you depending on the situation.
Right, so to summarize, keep your GPA higher than a 2.0 and make sure that you at least successfully complete all your courses. One thing to keep in mind is that when you drop a course after the add and drop period and you end up having a DR grade, that will count as an unsuccessful attempt and it will hurt your percentage. It will count as unsuccessful for financial aid purposes.
Okay, hopefully that answers your question, but remember, more information, more detailed information is available on the financial aid website online, so you can always refer to that. Now we have Morgan from Margate that wants to know what is the difference between being an independent or dependent student and if there's any advantages or disadvantages in that regards. Well, essentially all this is regulated by the federal government. So essentially Congress is the one that determines what the FAFSA application is. So they have Section 3 on your application is going to ask a series of yes or no questions. And based on your answers to those questions, that's what's going to determine your dependency status. So for example, just briefly, because the questions are a lot, but essentially if you're single, if you're under the age of 24, if you do not have children that you support, if you're not on active duty or a veteran, if you're not working in a graduate or professional degree, as long as you answer no to all those questions, you're considered to be a dependent student, and you actually have to provide not only your information, but your parents' information as well. As far as advantages or disadvantages, it's really relative. A student's income is weighted more severely than a parent's income on the FAFSA application. So, for example, a student that has a high income, but the parents have a low income, it's in their favor to be a dependent student because they'll take into account that whole picture. Even if it's backwards, sometimes a lot of students think that just by being independent, they're going to be eligible for more financial aid when the majority of the cases is the other way around.
All right, so we have Justin Rhodes. Hi, Justin, from Tampa, Florida. Wants to know that if you graduate from FIU and can't find a job, can you defer your loan payments? That's a very good question. As we mentioned earlier, your loan is going to repayment 6 months after you graduate or go below half-time status. So if for some reason you're having a hard time finding a job, The good thing about federal loans is that they really do work with you. They have different options where you can temporarily postpone your payments. So at that point, you would contact the Department of Education. You will let them know the situation, probably fill out a form or two, and they will postpone your student loan for a certain number of months, of course. If you ever decide to go back to school, the loan will automatically be deferred. So as long as you're in school, you don't have to, at least half-time. Thank you for clarifying that. So if you ever enroll back into school as a half-time student, your loan can be deferred until you're done with that new degree. So as long as you're in school, no payments. Financial hardship, you have to contact the Department of Education, and yes, they will work with you so that you do not fall behind or have late payments.
The important thing also to keep in mind is that if you experience some difficulties in repaying your student loans, you have to contact the Department of Education before you actually miss those payments. As long as you contact them ahead of time, they're actually going to be more willing to work with you and resolve the situation than, let's say, you've missed 5, 6 payments, and now is when you talk to them. There might not be so willing to help out in that situation. So actually give them a call before you miss a payment, before it becomes a problem.
Very good question from Darren Lapata from Sunrise, Florida. Darren wants to know if financial aid is available for a paralegal certificate program. Darren, we do have many certificate programs here at FIU. The only 2 programs that are covered by financial aid are the paralegal certificate program and our museum studies. Those are the only 2 that are financial aid eligible. Very good question.
Yeah, in order for a certificate program to meet the criteria for eligibility for federal funding, they have to have certain requirements and meet certain criteria before they're approved. Since certificates are usually so short, they do not meet the criteria for the length of time. But for paralegal here at FIU, it has been approved by the federal government to receive financial aid. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is that you would only qualify for student loans for the certificate program, and only at the freshman level, since it's a certificate program. Now we have a question from Victor Runson from Coral Springs, Florida, and wants to know if you have Medallion Bright Futures and live at home, if it's possible to cover all of your tuition with that. Medallion Scholarship covers $77 per credit, and tuition is a little bit more than that, so it does cover part of it, but essentially you would have to use either other financial aid to assist you with the difference, or you may choose to pay the difference that is not covered by the aid. Remember that it's always up to you to decide which awards you want, so you can pick and choose which awards to accept or decline. If your aid is sufficient to cover your tuition and fees, you're set. If it's not, all you really have to do is just pay the difference. Well, I think that is all the time that we have today, so thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great Panther Day. Once again, my name is George Lanning from the Financial Aid Office here at FIU.
And I'm Veronica Diaz.
And thank you for coming.
Here at FIU, our financial aid phone number is 305-348-7272.
And you can also visit our website by going to onestop.fiu.edu and then click on financial aid. Anything that you need to know about financial aid is posted there, so make sure that you take the time to browse the information there. Once again, thank you so much for joining us.
And have a good day.